Miami's got a new wide receiver. They did not get Trevor Pena. He went to Penn State for probably a pretty penny. You know what? I like Trevor Pena. I think he was the top receiver in the transfer portal at the time of his commitment to Penn State. And Miami was poking around for a reason. They clearly feel, having lost a couple of weapons from last year, notably Xavier Restrepo and second-round pick Elijah Arroyo at tight end as well, that they need to reload a little bit in the transfer portal. They've done just that. So they go out and they make another addition. And is it Trevor Pena? No. But what do you have? Well, here's Alex Donno of Locked On Canes to explain what Miami just got.
The Miami Hurricanes on Tuesday just added slot receiver Tony Johnson. He's a transfer from Cincinnati. He actually becomes the second receiver to join Miami in the spring transfer portal window. Keelan Marion from BYU, a receiver and big-time kick returner, joined the Hurricanes last weekend. And Tony Johnson comes at an area where Miami has some guys. Like, you talk about slot receiver. That's where Tony Johnson played. 70% of his reps last year with the Cincinnati Bearcats was in the slot. You know, Miami has Ray Joseph, who's been playing behind Xavier Restrepo for the past couple of years, so his experience is limited, and exciting true freshman Malachi Toney. But I think in this case, Miami is thinking surround Carson Beck with as many experienced weapons as possible. Johnson has gotten extensive playing time over the past 3 seasons, started his career at FAU, Florida Atlantic in Boca Raton, played 2 years before transferring to Cincinnati. With the Bearcats last season, 48 catches for 449 yards. He led his team with 6 touchdowns last year. So a sure-handed, proven guy with a year of eligibility left. And my big thinking there is to have as much experience in the receiver room. Miami also back in the January transfer window brought in C.J. Daniels, a 6-year senior receiver from LSU. Miami's other receivers, the ones who returned from last season, are all young. So to have as much experience as possible when the Hurricanes open up their season against Notre Dame. And that defense, that defensive secondary that held Penn State, they held their wide receivers to 0 catches in a college football playoff game. Miami is trying to load up with experience in their receivers room, and that's what Tony Johnson brings. He really wanted to come back to the Sunshine State. He's from Ocala, Florida, played his first couple of years at FAU, and the schools that Tony Johnson was deciding between were University of Miami, where he ultimately lands, and Miami beats out Florida State, and they beat out UCF for Tony Johnson. So again, this is a player who scored 6 touchdowns last year, primarily playing slot receiver, someone Miami feels can raise the floor and the ceiling of their offense. So Tony Johnson is the newest Miami Hurricane and another weapon for Carson Beck to throw around to.
Yeah, anytime you can add somebody that's a known commodity for a veteran quarterback, I'm certainly here for it. You can also come at it from the angle of, hey, he's a veteran quarterback. Shouldn't he be able to elevate young receivers? Sure. Did you feel like Carson Beck did that at Georgia? I certainly didn't. By the way, started his career at FAU. The other Florida schools, if you want to refer to them as that, are just the coaching rehab spots. FAU, one-time head coaching stop of Lane Kiffin. FIU, one-time head coaching stop of Mario Cristobal, now, of course, the Miami Hurricanes head coach. But Carson Beck last year did not have a great receiving core. Drops were a huge problem. Now, I don't care who you are at quarterback, you can't overcome that stuff. If you're throwing the ball on the money and the receiver is dropping it, guess what? You've done your job. He's got to be able to do his. So the question that raises in my mind when Miami goes out and makes these moves, and the Marion edition is a good one. Talked about him leaving BYU last week on the show. That was a bit of a surprise for the Cougars. I don't know that their passing game can be as good as it was last year. I do think there has to be at least a little component of what Donno mentioned of we need to make sure we have guys and a team that's sufficiently ready to compete with Notre Dame. You never want to come out week 1 in one of the biggest games in college football at home and just look flat and discombobulated. So I think bringing in a couple of veteran pieces that are capable playmakers makes a heck of a lot of sense. I still have Miami pegged as a regression candidate. There are several in college football of the high-profile variety, whether that's Colorado or Miami. I think those are regression candidates. I think Oregon and Ohio State don't regress to fall out of the playoff picture, but are not going to be at the same level where Oregon won the Big Ten, Ohio State won the national championship. I don't think either team plays at that level this season. They're resetting at quarterback and a bunch of other positions as well. I think Miami is in that sort of spot. Still, though, in the ACC, even though their schedule stinks. Miami's schedule easily the worst one amongst the big players in the ACC. They have 2 byes in a 3-week span. I don't know what happened there. They play, I think it's 7 straight conference games, and the last 2 are on the road to end the year. It's a nightmare sort of schedule. And Carson Beck is not Cam Ward, or else he would have gone out and stayed in the NFL draft. He could become a first-round pick again. Whether he would be right now, I think it's kind of up in the air. Depends on who you ask. Apparently, evaluating quarterbacks is really tough these days, and not everybody has the same opinion. But Beck has Shannon Dawson. Now Beck has some weapons around him. There will be questions on defense. There's been a defensive staff change for Miami, and understandably so. I think Miami is a good team. Their win total on FanDuel is 8.5 for a reason, though. Last year was 9.5. Why? Because they had a team that, frankly, should have won 10 or 11 games, even though they were escaping all the time, on the back of Cam Ward's magic quite often. Carson Beck isn't going to do that for you. You need to have a more complete and holistic and balanced team around him. I don't know if Miami has that yet. I think they have taken steps in the spring transfer portal window to move in that direction. So those 2 wide receivers go to Miami. Here's another receiver. Not sure where he's winding up. I'm pretty bullish on this guy. If you were looking for a number 2 receiver, don't know that he can be a number 1 because he's only got about 426 yards in his career. He has not been used a whole heck of a lot. But Tobias Merriweather entered the portal from Cal. Who hasn't transferred away from Cal? I'm pretty sure you and I have done it at this point. Merriweather was a 2022 recruit, class of 22, committed to Notre Dame, transferred to Cal, has been there for, I believe, the last couple of seasons. This is a guy who has really high untapped potential. Really high. He should be, he is, in my view, one of the top wide receivers available in the transfer portal. Because what he brings to the table is not just some experience at the Power 4 level. He doesn't have the production necessarily, but he's not new to college football. You don't have to teach him how to be a student athlete, because guys still do that sort of stuff. You don't have to teach him how to get in the weight room, how to work at practice, how to get better, how to go against college competition, or how to make plays in games. He's done that as well. He just wasn't used a ton last year because of the nature of Cal's offense. He certainly could have been. Merriweather is 6'5", 205 pounds. And I think he's a guy that, for a Power 4 school, is a high-end number 3 receiver, a solid number 2, a low-end number 1. I am that high in him. I know he doesn't have the career stats to blow you away. I get it. I fully get it. But although the portal is closed for guys to enter, they're still getting into the portal, though. I'm not entirely clear how that works. There's a delay in announcing it maybe, or paperwork or what have you. But players are impact guys are still going to come out of the transfer portal in the coming days. And that is why I keep this show 5 days a week all year round. There are always people to talk about. We just have to see where they wind up. But keep your eye on Tobias Merriweather. The last guy that I highlighted, who was a 6'5" receiver, by the way, on this show as, hey, I think he's got real Power 4 potential. Sincere Brown wound up at Colorado. And later this week, we'll definitely talk about what the Buffs did at wide receiver. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.